Hi, you're watching Floyd Steinberg's YouTube channel. Today I'm starting a new series analyzing the synthesizer sounds of famous synth pop hits from the 80s, 90s, 2000s and today, and I'm trying to recreate those sounds on my own machines. My goal here is not to be 100% accurate, but to have a look at the inner workings of these sounds and these songs and try to have some fun with that and try to expand on them. The first song I'm going to put through this algorithm is Visage, Fade to Grey, released in 1980, written by Bill Curry and Chris Payne, Midge Ure and Stephen Strange. They famously created this during a jam session while supporting Gary Newman on his tour. This song was a big hit in many countries in Europe and even in America, I think. Let's take a look at the sounds, beginning with the bass. Okay, so this song is from the early 80s or the late 70s. This was before the advent of digital synths, so the band used analog synths, which you can hear obviously when listening to the track. And as this is the first video in the series, just a short intro on analog synths or subtractive synths. They create sounds with oscillators, which oscillate in time and create certain basic wave shapes, which are sine, triangle, saw wave, and pulse wave or square wave. And from this rich sounds you can then use a filter to cut away certain frequencies, resulting in mellower sounds. So here I'm applying a low-pass filter which cuts away all the high frequencies and lets the low frequencies pass, hence the name. You have a lot of filter options on most synthesizers. This one has 3: low-pass filter, band-pass filter and high-pass filter. Let's listen to them. Low-pass filter we already had, so a band-pass filter will only let pass the frequencies which are close to the filter cutoff frequency. And we have a high-pass filter which will only let higher frequencies pass. Then, of course, very important, filter resonance, which creates an emphasis on the filter cutoff frequency and will amplify all the sound which just passes through the filter at the resonant frequency. Sounds like this. That's the typical whistling sound there. Another important feature of subtractive synths are envelopes which can control the filter frequency or the loudness of the oscillators, and of course LFOs, which are low frequency oscillators. That means that they oscillate over time in a very slow manner and you can use them to control, for example, filter frequency or pitch or loudness. Let's listen to this on the filter. You can hear the LFO changing the filter in time, and as you can see here, you can also choose different waveforms. And last but not least, we have effects. Most synthesizers do have them nowadays. Back in the 80s that wasn't the case, you had to use external effects, but this peak has some very nice chorus, delay and reverb effects. Sounds like this. Yeah, of course, there's a lot more to talk about here, but I guess you already know that. So let's dive into the song, shall we? Okay, so the bass sound. Recreating the bass patch of the song Fade to Grey is quite easy because all you need to do is to initialize the patch, and then you need to choose a saw wave for your oscillator, turn up the volume, and then you can start playing the bass line. If you listen closely to that song, you will notice there's a phaser on that sound. A phaser effect is just shifting around the phase of the waveform, that's the name. And the peak doesn't have that, so I'm going to help myself a tiny little bit of chorus, and I'll also dial in 2 more oscillators and slightly detune them. So, not too much, so listen to this again. Alright. and that's the bass. And let's also take a look at that organ-like sound which is featured in the introduction of this song. Okay, so the first thing you'll hear in the song is this organ-like sound, and that one is quite easy to do. You just need some sine waves. Let's switch all the oscillators to sine waves here. Don't push the volume of the oscillators up all the way, go halfway, and then adjust the frequency by changing the cause tuning 1 octave down on one of the oscillators and 1 octave up on the other one, and leave the third one where it is. And now we've got this sound. And if you want to, you can also apply a low frequency oscillator to the volume of the oscillators to achieve a rotary speaker-like effect. Let's do this for the first oscillator. I'm going to reduce the loudness of the other two now so you can hear the effect. So we're going here to LFO1, plus minus. Destination is going to be oscillator 1 level, and let's change the depth a bit here. And now listen to this. This will inject a certain dynamic into this otherwise relatively static sound. You can also add some chorus and reverb. And the standout feature of the song is the synth pad. Okay, the string sound of this song. So I'm beginning with an initialized patch. This is a pure saw wave, and the first thing we want to get right is the amp envelope of the sound. We have attack, decay, sustain, release, and attack is how fast the note begins. There's a string sound, so let's have a long attack. Like this. Let's have a longer release. Release is what happens when you release a key, obviously. Let's have a long decay and a higher sustain. Sustain is the loudness of the tone while you're holding the key. So decay determines the time between the peak loudness of your sound and the sustain phase. If you dial this up, it will fade away slowly and then stop at the sustain level. So now the next thing we want to get right is the filter, and obviously the sound is quite thin, so my guess is they're using a bandpass filter. And we can also set the slope, which is the strength of the filter, and I guess it's a 12 decibel filter in this song. So now you have to get this right. Alright, now let's dial in a little bit of resonance. Yeah, that sounds right. If you listen closely to the sound, you'll hear that it's slightly modulating its pitch. So the pitch goes up and down. So that can be reproduced with an LFO on the pitch. So we have this button here for LFO depth. Now let's dial this in a bit. Yeah. That sounds right, but we also need to adjust the rate or the speed of this. I think this is okay. Now the next thing we want to do is to add another oscillator at the same pitch with the same LFO pitch modulation. And a little bit of fine tuning here. We're almost there. Let's add a little bit of filter envelope. So the filter envelope is the same as the amp envelope, only adjusts the frequency of the filters. Let's dial in the same setup as with the amp envelope here, but it's applied to the filter. And now you need to set the strength of this envelope, which is possible here on the envelope depth. Now you have to set the depth just right, so you got the right filter amount, so it sounds like in the song. Okay, and now we'll add chorus effect. So we have a nice bit of stereo spread and modulation here. Yeah, I'll make some fine adjustments later, but that's it in principle. Next one. Okay, next, the lead sound, which plays the moving melody, which has this haunting tone. That is a square wave, which is modulated with oscillator sync. No, not that one, the other one. I'll show you. So first, let's choose a square wave on oscillator 1. Sounds like this. Now we want to modulate the oscillator sync. This is a technique where you begin the phase of the oscillator anew each time another oscillator has finished its phase. And on the peak, there is a virtual oscillator running in the background, so you can do this using only one oscillator here, and there will be a graph on screen to show you the principle. So the first thing I want to do is to go to the mod menu, then go to direct. Now we want to modulate it using LFO1. This is a low frequency oscillator which just moves the timer around, which restarts the oscillator. And we want to apply the LFO to oscillator sync on oscillator 1. Let's listen to this. Now let's change the depth here. This sounds fine to me. Let's adjust the rate a bit so it doesn't move that fast. Yeah, I think that's the sound. And now you want to, we can apply a low pass filter on this so it's not too harsh. Or maybe even a band pass filter. Yeah, I think that's okay. And now let's add some reverb. This sounds quite abrupt when I play this. So we also need to introduce some portamento. So let's turn this on, adjust the portamento time, and now you can play on the keyboard. Yeah, nice. Okay, that's done. Next patch. Yeah, and last but not least, there's this electric piano-like sound which is used to play the hook line or melody during the breaks in the song. Okay, and the last patch we're going to need is this piano-like sound. That one is quite easy. It's a mixture of a square wave on oscillator 1 and a saw wave on oscillator 2. Just turn them as loud as you can. Maybe add a little bit of detuning. And then you want to care about the envelopes of this. So of course you're going to have a fast attack because the piano sound begins relatively abrupt. And you want a moderate decay, no sustain, because when you hold the piano key it will eventually fade to silence, and a slightly longer release. Let's listen to this. So now let's turn this louder. I forgot to dial in the saw wave here. And we also want to add a filter envelope. So the piano begins sounding brighter and then eventually gets duller as the note rings out. So let's introduce low pass filter and dial the frequency down a little bit, dial the envelope strength up. So you can now adjust the filter envelope here. And it's the same as the amp envelope. So we'll begin with no filter at all and eventually go to full filter on the decay time and a longer release time, and the result is this. If you're really ambitious, you can also add a mod matrix which pushes up the filter frequency if you hit the keys harder, but I'm not going for that today. It's just an idea to improve this. I don't have Simmons drums here, so I'm just using samples on my Akai MPC-1. Okay, all the sounds you need are there, so now it's time to assemble this song. And yeah, This song is made up from mainly two parts, with the exception of the intro, and they have two different chord progressions. So the first one goes from D minor to F major, then to A minor, and back to D minor. And then in the chorus we have C major, and then E minor, and then A minor. Yeah, and then you repeat this, and there are also minor variations where these pads are left out and instead they are playing this piano-like sound, but that's it. So let's take a look at the bass. The bass is just the typical 80s octave bass, so you just play the bass notes of the chords we just played. So in the verse it's and in the chorus it's the same, only you play the bass notes, so it's C, E, A. Yeah, that's quite simple. And then you have a lead sound which just plays some haunting lead lines. Alright, and then we have this piano sound. And that's basically it. For this song they used the Simmons SDS5 drums. I didn't find samples on the internet which are fitting, but I found some SDS samples, and the beat is quite simple. In the original song the hi-hat is doing some variations on that rhythm if you listen closely, but this will do for our song. Now if I combine all of this and add some vocals, we'll end up with this.
One man on a lonely platform, one case sitting by his side. Two eyes staring cold and silent, shows fear as it turns to hide. We fade to grey. We fade to grey.
Yeah, and that's it. Fade to Grey. A true classic from 1980, so 41 years ago. Incredible. Yeah, I hope you found this interesting and useful and fun, and if you liked this, please consider subscribing to my channel. And as always, thanks for watching. See you again very, very soon. Bye bye.